Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, June 29th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr, and today I'm joined by Marc Givler. He's one of the recruiting analysts for BuckeyeScoop.com. Marc, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom. You guys are rolling without me while I was on the road, so I was listening to the shows and really happy with the way we're going here on this stuff so far. It's been a really cool listen each day.
Yeah, you've had a lot of time to listen to podcasts because you've been in the car quite a bit over the span of the last week. You were out visiting a bunch of top prospects for the classes of 2022, 2023. One of those trips, we'll start with the guy out in Missouri. That's a spot where the Buckeyes have had a lot of success recently. You may remember players such as Ezekiel Elliott, Cameron Brown, Jameson Williams, all from the St. Louis area. Now there's another very highly touted wide receiver from St. Louis, same high school as Jameson Williams, actually. His name is Luther Burton. What kind of prospect is he? What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he's going to be one of the top receivers in the country for 2022. I mean, he's going to be right in that discussion as the top guy. He's almost 6'2". He's about 195 pounds. He can run. He's explosive. He's strong. He's physical. He's got great hands, great body control. He's a two-sport athlete. Was the pretty much the best player on a state championship winning basketball team this winter as a sophomore. Was a guy that got invited to like the Team USA development camps and things like that. So he's a big basketball guy as well, but he's going to be focusing on football. He told me he's not even sure how, he may play basketball as a junior. He's not even sure about that yet, but he's not a guy who's going to be wavering between the two sports. So that's obviously encouraging. And I think the biggest takeaway from watching him this past week was, before you see him in person, you're expecting, because you hear about the basketball stuff, you're maybe expecting a basketball body. You're maybe expecting him to be kind of skinny and lean. He's almost 200 pounds. He looks like a football player. He's almost built like a linebacker in certain respects. He's a physically imposing kid. And I personally think he's going to be one of the best guys in the class. So it's going to be interesting, and certainly Ohio State and Alabama and Oklahoma, all the big names really for the most part are making him a priority. So it's going to be a fun battle.
Now, whenever Brian Hartline is after someone hard, it always seems like it's probably better than 50-50 that he ends up signing them. Between Hartline's recruiting prowess and the Jameson Williams connection, where exactly do the Buckeyes stand with that right now with Burden, or is it kind of too early to tell with him?
Well, if you ask him, he's going to tell you he hasn't even thought about it yet. He is super, super laid back about the recruiting process. You pry a little bit about, who you're going to visit, who's standing out. He gives you the right answers. I haven't even thought about it yet. I was talking to his coaches, and they kind of backed him on that. They don't think he's really too concerned about recruiting yet. And he kind of told me he's going to take his 5 officials. But that being said, there's no question Brian Hartline's been recruiting him since he was a freshman. They were able. The Jameson Williams connection is huge. The St. Louis connection is big. Ohio State's got a lot of clout in that city right now. I think they're going to be tough to beat moving forward. But it is one of those things where I do expect him to go visit Alabama. He's already been to Oklahoma. I'd expect him to get back there eventually. Florida's recruiting him very hard. Of course, Missouri is going to try and keep him home. So I think he will go through the process quite a bit. But I look at the relationships and the connections there, and I just think Ohio State's going to be really tough to beat.
You talked to a pair of pretty impressive 2022 defensive linemen from the Indianapolis area while you were on that trip. The first one is Caden Curry. He holds an Ohio State offer. He's from Center Grove High School, just outside Indianapolis. What did you learn about Caden Curry while you were speaking with him?
Yeah, he's interesting because his family's from Ohio. His mom was born in Marion, Ohio. The grandparents are from Ohio. The grandparents are huge Ohio State fans to the point they would fly out to the Rose Bowls and things like that to follow the team. So there's a lot of Ohio connections there. And right now, he told me Ohio State, Alabama, and Indiana are the 3 that he's talking to the most. Obviously, Indiana is going to try and keep him home as probably the top player in the state for 2022. So Ohio State and Alabama are kind of interesting there. He certainly has a lot of respect for both of those programs and what they've produced along the defensive line in recent years. He's got building a good relationship with Larry Johnson. And, we'll see what happens with Alabama because I assume he's going to visit there in the fall. But, I get the impression that geography is going to matter there. And I get the impression that Ohio State, again, is in really strong shape there. And just talking to some other people, on the Ohio State end of things, the impression there is that they're in a good spot. They almost view him as an in-state kid because he's only, he's 3 hours max from Columbus and has all those family connections to Ohio. They almost view him, as an in-state prospect. So, I think there's a really good chance he ends up in the class. I think they're thinking more of like a 3-tech defensive tackle than an end. But he's a versatile guy. He's another multi-sport guy. He plays basketball like everyone else does in Indiana, but he's also a pretty good baseball player. So, no issues there. He knows he's a football guy in college, but they love to recruit those multi-sport athletes.
Another guy you met with in the Indianapolis area, another defensive lineman, Joe Strickland. He's a 4-star prospect, again, class of 2022. He does not have an Ohio State offer yet, but it sounds like Ohio State is staying in pretty close contact with him, and he may be someone that's worth keeping an eye on as well.
Yeah, he's another one he's kind of a combo guy, inside outside. He's probably got maybe a little better chance of playing outside than Curry would, particularly in Ohio State system. But yeah, he's a talented guy. He's got a lot of big offers himself, Penn State, Michigan, and a few others. I tend to think that he's maybe waiting on Ohio State and Notre Dame to see what those two programs do before he really starts to shape things in his recruiting process. I think those are two schools that if they offered could really make a strong case there. He's talking to Kevin Wilson weekly. In fact, one of the first thing he did after our interview is he was walking off from his workout was he called Coach Wilson. So they're definitely keeping in touch. They're keeping an eye on him. He would have camped in June had they had the college camps been able to function. So they kind of lost an evaluation opportunity there, but definitely a guy they're communicating with at this point, which is more than really more than you can say for a lot of kids in 22 because. The relationships there probably don't start too much for a lot of guys until September 1st when the coaches can start calling the kids. So right now it's mostly prospect induced, and also the high school coaches can get guys on the phone and things like that. But the fact that they're already talking to him quite a bit, so makes him a guy to watch.
Last week, you also wrote about another intriguing in-state prospect for 2022 quarterback named Drew Aller. He is headed into his junior season. And again, does not have an Ohio State offer yet, but it sounds like that could potentially change this fall if he has a good year. What kind of prospect is he for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, he's really fascinating because he's like 6'5", like maybe 210, but he's a good athlete. Like he played a lot of receiver, he played some linebacker coming up in like junior high. He's a guy who always played some quarterback, but really only started focusing on the position as a freshman, which makes him very unique. As most of the quarterbacks you're going to find, those guys have been groomed to play the position since they were 6, 7, 8 years old, basically since they picked up the football. That's not the case with him, which can be good and bad, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But it makes for some intriguing potential there. And he didn't start until week 8 last year. He came in, he had like a 400-yard game right away. Then he had a 4-touchdown performance, I believe, against St. Ed's in the playoffs, which they lost the game. But I believe Bill Green was actually at that game. So he's done some really impressive things in a very short amount of time, and he's got such great physical tools that he's going to be a guy I think they look at very closely. I know Corey Dennis watched him at a basketball practice back in the winter when they were allowed to be on the road. So they're watching him. Again, it would have been nice to have him on campus in June throwing in front of Ryan Day and Corey Dennis, but that didn't happen, of course. And so he's going to be one of these guys that we're going to be watching in the fall because right now their 2022 quarterback recruiting is wide open. There's a couple guys out there that they like, of course, but there's nothing yet to the point of like, okay, they've offered him and he's leaning towards Ohio State. There's just not. We're not at that point yet, and they've lost a lot of evaluation time. They would have really settled a lot of things, I think, this spring and summer, and they're just not able to get those things settled without being able to see these guys throw. So he's definitely a guy to watch this fall.
They took a pair of quarterbacks this past year with C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller. Right now they have Kyle McCord committed for 2021. But with as much turnover as there is with the transfer portal, do you see them potentially taking a second guy at the position in 2021 or 2022?
So I don't think they will in 21, at least not a high school kid. I think they're going to just go with Kyle McCord here. What I think is interesting is not only looking at maybe what they might want to do in 22, but seeing if they might try and mine the portal a little bit, which is always tricky. I think if they could find a Chug or a Gunnar Hoke as like a 1 or 2 year stopgap type of guy, just to give you 4 or 5 scholarship quarterbacks that you want to have, just to give you a little bit of depth and experience, I think that would make a lot of sense. Now, you've got to walk the tightrope there where you don't want to discourage the guys in your pipeline. They've got 3 very talented young quarterbacks there when you're talking about Stroud, Miller, and McCord. And I don't know that you want to start getting yourself into a situation where you're bypassing those guys through the portal. And it's also, even though they found these guys and it's worked out for them, it actually is hard to get a guy like a Chug or a Gunnar Hoke. I mean, those are guys that could have went maybe to smaller programs and been a starter. It's hard to convince guys to do that. It's hard to convince guys to pass up a potential starting opportunity and come to a place where it's very unlikely they're going to start and they may not play. So that's always, there's always the balance, striking the balance there is always difficult. I guess to answer the question, in a short manner, I think they're going to have to add another body somewhere, whether that's a second guy in 22 or some type of grad transfer through the portal, whatever it may be. I do think they're going to have to sneak another body into the program at some point, and it's just going to be a matter of how they do that. I just think the least likely scenario is them adding a second one in 21. I think that's probably the least likely.
Ryan Day has told us repeatedly that he really wants to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks in that room at all times. And with the transfer portal, the way the math works out, you can't just take one kid every year and end up with 4 scholarship kids in there every year, because it seems like someone is transferring every 4 years or every couple of years from just about every program in the nation. So you've got to bring in either a second kid in a high school class or someone through the transfer portal coming back the other way. That'll be very interesting to see how they sort that out. Another change to the Buckeyes class of 2021 happened late last week with the decommitment of defensive back Devonta Smith. There are a number of names that you guys discussed last week on the Gives in the Bank podcast about, other players who Ohio State might be interested in the class and to kind of fill out that class. Where do you see Ohio State turning to fill out that defensive backs class now that Devonta Smith is decommitted?
Yeah, I mean, they have 2 kind of top guys right now. At cornerback, it's Jordan Hancock, who's committed to Clemson. So that's going to be tough. But there's optimism that they can get him on campus in the fall. And if that happens, especially with the way Clemson operates, where they really try and play hardball with their commits not visiting other schools, that could be interesting. I've just sensed increased optimism there, slowly but surely, the last month or two. Some increased optimism that they can actually get him on campus. And if they push him that far where he is willing to make the visit and kind of cause some issues there with Clemson, then you have to think they've got a chance for the flip, or else he wouldn't risk doing that. So it's going to be interesting. A lot of it's just, rumblings and smoke right now. And, we're not going to really know anything for, 2.5 months because, there's nothing he can do between now and September 1. He's not going to be able to visit. So where things are standing today isn't all that important because it really just matters where things are standing, in September when he can actually go out and visit. But if things keep trending the way they're going right now, I think they have a great chance to get him on campus for a visit. So he's kind of the top corner. The top safety is Derek Davis out of Pittsburgh area, Gateway High School, big powerhouse. That's an Ohio State-Penn State battle. But again, there's other schools, Clemson, LSU, Georgia, a few others Probably a guy who takes his visits. I personally like where Ohio State stands right now, but I recognize Penn State as a very viable threat there, but I like where Ohio State's at. That's their safety guy right now. And then from there, I think they just continue to evaluate things. I was told by a pretty good source the other day that they're not in a hurry to replace Devonta Smith in the class. They're going to kind of be methodical about this, let the Jordan Hancock thing play out, take a look at some other guys. I could see a Jalen Davies, who was right there on the radar for so many months there, who was told he needed to visit first and then got a little bit impatient and committed to Oregon here about a week ago. I could see him entering back into the mix. They watched some early season film. They like what they see. I mean, he's probably still going to have to visit, but if they call him up in September or October and say, hey, we want to fly you out here on an official visit, I think there's a good chance he would do that. So that's another name to watch who may kind of resurface. But other than that, I think they're going to just kind of watch some early season film and take their time and make sure they find the right guy.
All right, and before we let you go, I want to let you get a plug in. Time is running out to be a member of our Founders Club. All you have to do is sign up to be a paid member of BuckeyesScoop.com by the 4th of July to be a part of it and get some special perks. Mark, so what's some of the perks that come along with being a member of the Founders Club?
Yeah, so we're going to try. Well, first of all, we'd like to reward kind of the people who are helping us get off the ground here. I've never been super comfortable with the idea that, people get in at full price and then you start, giving your content away for half price or, 75% off or something like that to new customers. I'd like to kind of reward our people who are kind of riding with us from the beginning. And we're going to kind of evolve this club with some input from the membership. As the months go by here, we're going to get some feedback and things like that. But, basically we're going to have some certain giveaways, raffles, some events we're planning. We'd like to have something during the season, especially maybe a night before a home game or something, some type of gathering, COVID willing. But we're hoping to kind of do some special stuff for those people. Maybe do a lunch type of thing, a golf outing. So there's going to be certain events and opportunities available to those people as kind of a thank you. And then eventually, hopefully by the end of the summer, but eventually here in the next few months, we will have, you'll get some type of badge or special recognition on your profile on the message board. And so that people know, you're a Founders Club guy. So, we've got a lot of different ideas. We're going to evolve this over time and kind of get some feedback on some of our ideas and kind of what people are what they like and, see if we get any new ideas and can implement those if they make sense. So going to be kind of a living, breathing thing, but we're excited about it. And we think it's a good way to reward people who are putting their trust into us here at the beginning.
And you can become a member of the Founders Club by going to BuckeyesScoop.com anytime this week before the 4th of July and signing up. Obviously, we have great free content there, but you sign up to be a member, get even more insight, analysis, and insider reports in our member section. So, Mark, thank you for joining us. And thank you all for listening. Make sure you can find us and all of the other great podcasts from Buckeye Scoop on the Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Just search for Buckeye Scoop there to find all of our great shows. You can subscribe right there. Please leave us a rating and review as well. Have a great day, and we will talk to you tomorrow.